Hey guys, David here. Sorry for not having been posting any new videos lately. And to all those recent and new subscribers, thank you for tuning in and for sticking through. Thank you. I've been kind of out of it lately, but here I am to finally bring you guys the top 10 movies, at least my top 10 movies of 2011. After 2 months. I've been spending the past couple months trying to watch through as many movies as possible. Movies that I think have gotten a really good word of mouth, especially from people whose opinion I trust, and I mostly agree with. I mean, I'm so into movies that have a bad word of mouth, I happen to avoid. It's like an automatic reaction to them. I just don't see them. I'm a man who values his time. Anyways, let's get started. But before I do, I want to let you guys on a little twist this year. There's a bit of a twist this time around. I've been doing this for about 2-3 years, and every time I do a top 10 movies of 2011, there's always, the number 10, the number 5, and the number 1 film. And the number 1 film is, most of the time, my favorite film of that year. 2011, in my opinion, had so many good movies that this time I decided to go ahead and, like I said, throw in a twist, and this time there is no particular order. There's no number 1 film, there's no number 5 film, there's not, the bottom 10 or the top 5. There's just my top 10 films of 2011. There's one film that had something that I truly loved in that film that another one didn't. And due to that, I really couldn't balance out between the movies that I wanted to put, as my number 1 film or my number 5 or whatever. So again, no particular order. I do not have a favorite film last year because there were so many good ones. So I put the list of my top 10 films into a randomizer, and now here's the list. Starting with number 10 is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. How can this film not make anybody's top 10 list? It had everything that you needed in a grand finale. I mean, if you guys have not seen my review, here it is. But just to sum it up real quickly, it had everything that you needed in a finale for a franchise of this magnitude. The past few films have been developing the characters, have developing the story, so what do you need in a Part 2 where it's mostly just the battle? The battle. And done so well. The acting is great, the story is great, the directing, just, it's captured so wonderfully. Of course, there's some things different from the book. After all, this is part 2, so it's like the latter half of the book. But we got through that camping, so we just want things to just go berserk. And in fact, they do. Number 9 is Warrior. Probably one of the most underrated movies of this year. I heard really great things about it, and I knew that I had to go see it, and I was hoping that this is one of those films that nobody hears about, but I'm gonna be like, hey, you have got to see this. It's really amazing. And sure enough, it was. Granted, when I read the story, I was like, okay, this could go one of both ways, and I also heard the director. I really haven't seen much for him. I heard he made one really great sports film, Miracle. So I went in with expectations, but they were low. And this movie just blew them out of the park. Nick Nolte, when I was walking out, I said to myself, Nick Nolte has got to get an Oscar nomination, and sure enough, he did, and I was proud that he did. But beyond that, the entire cast was great. Joel Edgerton, Tom Hardy, man, Tom Hardy is gonna kill as Bane. And overall, the directing and the handling of the story was really well. I mean, this movie could have sucked, to be honest, but it didn't. It's being compared to Rocky, and in a way, it's kind of like Rocky, but in a way, it kind of isn't, because Rocky is about an underdog overcoming obstacles in order to reach his, his goal, to reach the top, as he does in the, montage. Here, it's not really about that. It's about two brothers who are already trained in fighting, but they kind of lost it because they went their separate ways. One of them is a teacher, the other was in the army. Without giving too much away. And both of them, for their own unique purpose, have to enter this tournament that, this MMA tournament for their own purpose. And the thing that connects them is their father, played by Nick Nolte, and it's just a clash between them until ultimately, in the end, you can see this in the trailer, in the end, they're gonna have to fight each other. And of course, like everybody has said, the ending really is a tearjerker. I was trying to fight back tears. And usually a movie doesn't do that. Okay, and if a movie can do that, it's going in my top 10 list. Number 8 goes to Rise of the Planet of the Apes. If you guys have not seen my review, you can click it right here. And if you guys watch my review, you can easily tell that this is one of my favorite films of 2011. I mean, I saw the trailer and I was like, I don't know, it doesn't look that great. Not to mention, we're just trying to get that taste out of our mouths from the last Planet of the Apes movie, the Tim Burton one. But man, was this a damn great movie. Great cast, great directing. In my opinion, some good cinematography here and there. Nice little nods to the old Rise of the Planet of the Apes, the classic Planet of the Apes. But of course, the number 1, or actually the 2 gems of this movie, Andy Serkis's performance, and then the visual effects to capture that performance and translate it onto film was just magnificent. I was uber pissed when Planet of the Apes did not win Best Visual Effects at the Oscars. I mean, Hugo, Hugo over this. That was probably one of the biggest upsets. I mean, no Oscar, ceremony is complete without an upset, but that was the biggest one. I mean, hardly are you gonna see movies where they use visual effects to tell a story, as well as capture somebody, one of the best performances through visual effects. And you're not gonna get that you're only gonna get that every once in a while, and this is one of those movies. And as long as Andy Serkis returns, and more than likely the director of this movie, I can't remember his name, but as long as the director and Andy Serkis are back for this continuation of this story, I'm on board. Number 7, Rango. Most of what you heard about this movie, at least the good things, I feel the exact same way. So I'm not going to spend too much time with it. Let's just say that it has one of the best animation I've ever seen in a while. Done masterfully by ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, who are mostly a visual effects department. And for their first feature film, they knocked it out of the park. Gore Verbinski handled animation really well. I thought he translated very well over to animation from live action for the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. The story is a little familiar. I mean, you got the guy who's coming. I mean, it's a western with animals. You got the guy coming into the saloon, and everyone's asking, "Who are you?" And he tells this wild story, and then later down the line, you can tell that he's gonna have to live up to this story. But it's done so well and so honest and sincere to the Western style. I mean, every character is a bit of a stereotype, but you enjoy these stereotypes. You're not like, oh my god, I'm tired of this character. No, they make it their own. Plus, it has one of the best action sequences I've seen in a long time. Number 6 goes to Hugo. Now, you could watch my review of Hugo here, but I'm just warning you, it comes along with my review of Arthur Christmas and the Muppets, so it's a little long. But really briefly, let's just say that I enjoyed Hugo for the purpose of the film, which is to remind everybody how awesome it is to go to the movies and how cinema should be respected more. I did have a slight problem with how the story progressed. I mean, it's like point A to point B to point C. It doesn't get straight to that message that it tries to convey. But still, it doesn't feel disjointed like some other films do it. And it's Martin Scorsese. I mean, how can you go wrong? Okay, so here we are halfway through the top 10 movies of 2011. And so what I'm going to do this year is that I'm going to list some honorable mentions. These are films that didn't really make the cut for the top 10 movies of last year, but they were still great movies, and I still think you should check them out. Look at my list here. Remember this? It's a notepad. This is paper, alright? I don't have an iPad, I don't have a tablet. The Adventures of Tintin, Spielberg did really well with that film, and once again, like I said about Gore Verbinski translating to animation with Rango, Spielberg did it really well with Tintin. There's just certain moments where I thought it was a little too predictable. I mean, I know it's catering to kids, but I was kind of putting things together all in my mind like 20 minutes ahead than the movie was. But it did have one of the best action sequences I've seen this year, along with Rango. And when I was watching it, I felt like I was a little kid at Universal Studios again, going along for the ride. The Devil's Double, not exactly a great film, and not exactly a film to enjoy content-wise, if you guys know what I mean, for those of you who have seen it. But I have to give props to Dominic Cooper. Dominic Cooper, if you guys don't know who he is, he played Howard Stark in the Captain America film. He puts in 2 performances, and his performances were absolutely great, and he made it feel like he was actually 2 completely different people that looked a little bit similar. Speaking of Captain America, the First Avenger, and Thor. 2 films that, especially Thor, we weren't really expecting much, but when I heard Thor was amazing, I had to go see it, and sure enough, it was amazing. And then later on down the line, we got Captain America, and before I even saw it, I was like, okay, if Captain America is anything like Thor, it's gonna be great. And sure enough, they were, and I thought Marvel really did very well last summer with their films, and it makes me even more excited for the Avengers. Limitless was also another great film. I kind of caught it kind of late, damn near almost skipped it. Other films in the honorable mention list is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I thought that film was really well shot and really well put together, and a great performance by Rooney Mara, and it's a David Fincher film. I mean, come on. Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, not exactly one of the best films of the year, but it exceeded beyond its expectations. I mean, for a Mission Impossible film and a really enjoyable action film that should have been released in the summer, but instead in December, mad props to Brad Bird, who was another director who translated from one medium to another, from animation to live action. He did it well, and I'm looking forward to whatever it is that he's gonna do. And last but not least, Arthur Christmas. Definitely probably going to be one of the best staple Christmas movies to watch every time Christmas comes around. I mean, this movie had me laughing, and it will probably, if I had to, extend my top 10 movies to top 11, Arthur Christmas would definitely have made that list, because I love that film. It's one of those animated films that can cater to kids and adults and has jokes for both. So now let's continue with my top 10 movies of 2011, because I gotta get out of here. Let's continue the top 10 list with number 5, which is 50-50. Very rarely is a film going to be able to take genuine comedy that seems real, as well as probably the most dramatic thing in real life possible, which is cancer. This film did that. Great performance by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Great writing. I mean, there's some jokes in here that are so simple yet had me cracked. And props to Seth Rogen, who continues to be that obnoxious guy in this film, but by the end you'll end up loving him. I don't want to spoil it, but let's just say that something is revealed about him that makes you go, okay, as annoying as this guy can be, he's awesome. Plus, it's also very emotional, very touching, very heartfelt, and definitely one of the biggest snubs at the Oscars when nominations were announced. I mean, I don't know what they're thinking. Number 4 goes to another feel-good film, Midnight in Paris. And I really mean it when I say feel good, because when I was done watching this movie, I wanted to go to Paris. Woody Allen captures the Paris so beautifully, and I just wanted to go there straight out after I was done watching the movie. Great, likable, and relatable characters, a really nice premise, great cinematography, and great writing and directing from Woody Allen, as well as a really good performance by Owen Wilson. I mean, I haven't seen him do anything this good in a while. That sounded a little sad. Definitely one of the very few occasions where the Oscars got it right, and I really wouldn't mind watching this movie again. Number 3. Drive. An everyday activity that I'm personally not a fan of. Yeah, that's right, I don't like driving. I like getting from point A to point B, but I just don't like driving. Definitely one of those movies that are a little misleading due to some of the marketing and some of the trailers. It makes it seem like an action film, and there are some action sequences. There are 2 particular chase scenes in this movie that are just so amazing to watch. I can watch them over and over and over again, along with this movie. But the rest is mostly like a lot of people have already said, the rest is more like an independent film, even though it's coming from a big budget studio like Universal Pictures. But the directing is really great. Ryan Gosling puts in a good performance, as does Carey Mulligan. And speaking of performances, definitely another snub for the Oscar, Albert Brooks, who plays this, he plays a mobster, and he's one of those mobsters where at the beginning of the film, he looks nice, he looks chill, he's like, hey, what's up, how are things going, you're good? But if you do him wrong, he's probably gonna slice your throat. And eventually through the metamorphosis of this film, he starts to show that. Number 2 goes to X-Men First Class. Man, this was the year of prequels. After the X-Men franchise was getting worse and worse, it was really refreshing and a huge sigh of relief for us, very, comic book nerd fans, to see X-Men done well by a director who knows X-Men, and that is Matthew Vaughn, who did Kick-Ass. And on top of that, knows superheroes very well. Has all the proper elements of a summer action film. I mean, you got special effects, you got action, you got, superpowers, that kind of stuff. Great direction for an action film, but also overall great acting by the majority of the cast, especially you got Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy playing the 2 leads as Magneto and Professor X, respectively. How can you go wrong? If you guys have not seen my X-Men First Class review, here it is. And finally, number 1. The Artist. I have huge respect for films that honor cinema, that adore it, and they do it really well, because you can be a filmmaker and adore a certain, element of film, or a franchise, or a character, or a genre, and it could go horribly wrong. Alien vs. Predator and Alien vs. Predator Requiem are 2 prime examples. But The Artist is one of the best ones. Didn't have a problem whatsoever for it winning Best Picture and Best Director, and that is saying something. For those of you who have not heard of it or seen it, it is a film about the silent film era in which you got a big movie star, like a Clark Gable, Gene Kelly kind of guy who's got the mustache and he's like, yay, yay. At least that's how his ego is portrayed. And it's the late 1920s, he's at the top until talking pictures are introduced. And since this new revolutionary technology is being introduced, nobody wants to hear him talk, nobody wants to see him. While simultaneously you got a young dancer who's trying to make her big break, and thanks to talking pictures she does that. And it's basically the rise and fall of these 2 stars, and with both of them meeting in the middle and their stories intertwining. It is also important to note that this film is a silent black and white film, and it's done expertly, and it's not done like a gimmick. It's actually done to really illustrate the story in the best way possible to make it relevant to the story in the film. And like I said, the directing is great. I mean, this guy practically stole some of my ideas for a film that I was planning on doing like in the 60s or something. But he just captured the sheer authenticity of a silent film from the 1920s. Yeah, the main actor, Jean Dujardin, who also won the Oscar for Best Actor, he, does, the faces, and he just looks like he would be in one of those movies. Along with that, you got just the rest of the cast is amazing. John Goodman, James Cromwell, Bernice Bejo, who's the leading lady, and the dog. You can't mention this movie without mentioning the dog. Great writing. I mean, it is, there is no dialogue, but there's more than dialogue that is required for the screenplay, and it's done very well. And there's little things here and there that the director threw in. They're kind of like Easter eggs, but at the same time, they're relevant to the story and the film. And just me as a film buff, personally looking at that, like for example, without spoiling too much, let's just say that the first line that is said in this movie, which is mostly in the title card since it's a silent film, the first line of this movie foreshadows the entire plot of the film. I did not notice it the first time I saw it, and then the second time I saw it, I was like, oh. And I'm a big geek for movies that do that and do it so well. And that is my top 10 movies of 2011. Whoa, that was exhausting. I'm really hoping this does not turn out to be a really, really long video, even though it probably is. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for the recent subscribers to have subscribed and to have been patient enough for me to post a video finally. I am planning on posting some more reviews. I got a couple video games. Maybe every now and then I'll post a movie review, a movie that is a little more relevant and, you know, it reviews closer to their release date. That's basically what I'm saying. Let me know your guys' top 10 movies of 2011. And as always, please subscribe for more videos coming soon, hopefully. Thank you guys for watching, and see you guys later.